Let's begin with something simple but powerful. Progress builds confidence, perfection destroys it. Now that may sound a little surprising because most people have been taught the opposite. They've been told that if you want to feel confident, you need to be excellent first. You need to have it all figured out. You need to look sharp, sound sharp, perform sharply. But here's the truth: confidence doesn't come from being perfect. Confidence comes from making progress. Think about it. The first time you tried anything worthwhile, you weren't good at it. You weren't polished, you weren't impressive, but you were brave enough to try, and that attempt, even if it was awkward, planted a seed. The second attempt felt slightly better, the third felt a little more natural, and somewhere along the way you began to believe, maybe I can do this. That belief didn't come from perfection. It came from progress. Perfection is a heavy standard. It whispers in your ear, not yet, you're not ready, fix this first, improve that first, study a little more, wait a little longer. And while you're waiting, life is moving, opportunities are passing, time is ticking, and your confidence is shrinking. Why? Because every time you delay action in the name of perfection, you reinforce doubt. Progress, on the other hand, works differently. Progress says, start where you are, use what you have, improve as you go. It allows you to move before you feel fully prepared. And here's the miracle of it: movement creates belief. When you take a step, even a small one, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you are not stuck. You prove that you are capable of growth. And capability, even in small doses, builds confidence faster than any motivational speech ever could. Let's say you want to improve your communication skills. If you wait until you're the perfect speaker before you speak, you'll never begin. But if you speak once, even if your voice shakes, you've made progress. Speak again, and you're slightly better. Speak 10 times, and you start to see improvement. Speak 100 times, and people begin to call you confident. But you didn't start confident, you started committed. That's the difference. Perfection focuses on image. Progress focuses on improvement. Perfection asks, how do I look? Progress asks, how am I growing? And growth, steady, visible growth, fuels confidence like nothing else. You see, confidence is not something you inherit. It's something you build brick by brick, action by action. Attempt by attempt. If a child is learning to walk, they don't wait until they can walk perfectly before taking a step. They wobble, they fall, they try again, and every fall strengthens their muscles. Every attempt strengthens their balance. That child isn't worried about perfection. They are committed to progress. Somewhere along the way, as adults, we lose that courage. We become afraid of looking foolish, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of criticism. So instead of risking imperfection, we choose inaction. And inaction quietly erodes our self-belief. But here's what you must understand: mistakes do not destroy confidence, avoidance does. When you act and stumble, you gain experience. When you avoid action altogether, you gain insecurity. Progress allows room for error, and that room is where growth lives. The entrepreneur who launches before everything is perfect learns faster than the one still adjusting their logo. The writer who publishes imperfect work improves faster than the one still rewriting the first paragraph. The person who starts exercising imperfectly builds strength faster than the one waiting for the perfect routine. Progress builds evidence, and confidence is built on evidence. Every small win becomes proof that you can improve, proof that effort produces results, proof that you are not the same person you were yesterday. Perfection demands certainty. Progress develops competence, and competence is the mother of confidence. You don't need to be flawless to feel powerful. You need to be moving, because once you start moving, something extraordinary happens. You begin to trust yourself. You trust that even if things don't go exactly as planned, you can adjust, you can learn, you can improve. That self-trust is real confidence. So if you've been waiting to feel confident before you take action, reverse the formula. Take action first. Allow it to be imperfect. Allow it to be messy. Allow it to be a beginning. Because progress will give you what perfection never can, belief in yourself earned through experience. And when you believe in yourself because you've seen your own growth, no one can take that away from you. Choose progress and watch your confidence rise. Now let's talk about something that holds so many capable people back. Action creates clarity, waiting creates doubt. Most people believe they need clarity before they begin. They say, once I'm sure, once I understand everything, once I feel confident about the outcome, then I'll move. But that's not how life works. Clarity does not come before action. Clarity comes because of action. If you've ever driven through fog at night, you understand this principle. You can't see 10 miles ahead. You might not even see a full mile, but you can see far enough to move the car. And as you move, the road reveals itself. If you refuse to move until the entire road is clear, you will sit there forever. That's how progress works. You don't need the whole plan. You need the next step, but here's what waiting does. Waiting gives doubt time to grow. When you sit too long thinking about what could go wrong, your imagination becomes your enemy. You begin to magnify obstacles. You rehearse failures that haven't happened. You create problems that don't exist. Action interrupts that pattern. When you act, even in small ways, you gather information. You learn what works. You discover what doesn't. You begin to understand the terrain, and understanding produces clarity. Let's say someone wants to start a business. They spend months reading, researching, planning, adjusting, worrying. They say they are preparing, but often they are postponing because preparation feels safe, action feels risky. Yet the person who starts small, maybe imperfectly, immediately begins learning things no book can teach. They learn about customers, they learn about themselves, they learn about the market, and every lesson sharpens their direction. The one who waits is still guessing, the one who acts is gaining clarity. There's something powerful about movement. Movement reduces fear, movement produces feedback, movement reveals truth, and here's something else, action builds decisiveness. Indecision is exhausting, it drains energy, it creates internal tension. When you're constantly debating with yourself, you never feel settled. But when you make a decision and take action, even if it's not perfect, your mind relaxes, you're moving. You're engaged, you're participating in your own growth. Clarity rarely arrives like a lightning bolt. It arrives like a sunrise, slowly, gradually, as you keep going. Think about learning any skill. You don't fully understand it at the beginning. You understand pieces. You try something, you adjust, you try again, and with each repetition, the fog lifts just a little more. Waiting for perfect clarity is often disguised fear. Now, I'm not suggesting reckless action. I'm suggesting courageous action. Thoughtful but forward, moving, the kind of action that says, I may not know everything, but I know enough to begin, because beginning teaches you what thinking never will. When you act, you discover strengths you didn't know you had. You uncover weaknesses you can now improve. You meet people who help shape your direction. You find opportunities that only appear once you're in motion. Waiting keeps you outside the arena. Action puts you in the game. And once you're in the game, you learn faster. Consider how many people delay major decisions, changing careers, pursuing a dream, improving their health because they want guarantees. They want certainty, but life does not offer guarantees. It offers growth, and growth requires participation. The person who waits for absolute certainty often ends up with regret. The person who acts with reasonable faith ends up with experience. Inexperience is the greatest clarifier of all. Here's another truth. Action exposes reality. Sometimes what you fear isn't nearly as difficult as you imagined. Sometimes what you idealized isn't as perfect as you thought, but you only learn that by stepping forward. Waiting leaves everything theoretical, action makes it practical, and practical knowledge is powerful. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when you think about the entire journey, but journeys are not completed in thought. They are completed in steps. One step creates perspective, two steps create momentum, three steps create direction. Doubt thrives in stillness, clarity grows in motion. So if you're feeling uncertain, don't wait for the uncertainty to disappear. Move with it, let action teach you, let experience refine you, let progress reveal the path. You don't need perfect vision to begin. You need the courage to take the first step, because once you do, the next step becomes clearer, and the one after that becomes clearer still. Action may not answer every question immediately, but it will answer far more than hesitation ever will. Move and let the road rise to meet you. Let me share with you something that doesn't look very exciting on the surface, but holds extraordinary power. Small daily improvements create massive long-term results. Now that doesn't sound dramatic. It doesn't sound glamorous. There's no fireworks in that statement, and that's exactly why most people overlook it. They underestimate the power of small disciplines repeated daily. We tend to overestimate what we can do in a week and underestimate what we can do in a year. Success is not built in a day of intensity. It is built in days of consistency. If you improve just 1% each day, those improvements compound. They stack, they multiply, and after enough time has passed, the person you become is almost unrecognizable from the person you once were. But here's the challenge: the daily improvements often feel insignificant. Reading 10 pages doesn't feel life-changing. Making one extra sales call doesn't feel like a breakthrough. Choosing a healthy meal instead of a convenient one doesn't feel heroic. Yet those are the very decisions that shape your future. Life does not respond dramatically to what you do occasionally. It responds powerfully to what you do consistently. A farmer doesn't plant a seed and dig it up the next morning to see if it's working. He understands the law of process. He understands that growth happens beneath the surface before it becomes visible above the surface. Your habits work the same way. When you commit to small improvements, you are planting seeds. At first, nothing appears to change. You look the same, you feel similar, the results are modest, and this is where most people quit. They say, "This isn't making a difference," but it is. The difference is simply invisible for now. Consider someone who decides to improve their knowledge. They read a little every day, 10 pages, that's all. In a week, that's 70 pages. In a month, nearly 300. In a year, several thousand pages of new ideas, new strategies, new perspectives. Do you think that person will think differently after a year? Of course they will, and when you think differently, you act differently. When you act differently, you produce different results. It wasn't one book that changed their life, it was the daily discipline. Or consider health. One workout does not transform a body. One healthy meal does not transform energy levels, but daily attention to those choices reshapes strength, endurance, posture, confidence. It's the accumulation that matters, and accumulation requires patience. We live in a culture that celebrates quick wins. Overnight success, instant transformation. But if you study the lives of people who have achieved lasting success, you'll discover something interesting. Their success was not overnight. It was built quietly, gradually, persistently. They improved their craft a little each day. They refined their thinking. They sharpened their skills. They adjusted their habits. Perfection tries to leap forward in giant steps. Progress understands the power of small steps. Small steps are sustainable. Giant leaps are exhausting. When you attempt drastic change, you rely on motivation, and motivation rises and falls. But when you commit to small improvements, you rely on discipline. And discipline, once built, becomes steady. The magic is in the repetition. A single drop of water seems harmless, But if it falls consistently in the same place, it can carve through stone, not because of force, but because of persistence. Your daily actions are those drops. Each day you choose improvement over comfort, you are shaping your future. Each day you practice instead of procrastinate, you are reinforcing identity. Each day you learn instead of drift, you are strengthening your foundation. And here's something even more powerful. Small improvements change how you see yourself. When you keep promises to yourself daily, even small ones, you build integrity within. You begin to trust yourself. You say, I do what I say I will do. That self-trust fuels bigger commitments. But it all begins small. One extra effort, one extra minute, one extra attempt. The person who commits to tiny, steady improvements will eventually outperform the person who waits for perfect conditions to make a dramatic move. Time magnifies consistency. In the short term, progress feels slow. In the long term, it feels unstoppable. If you commit to improving your communication slightly every day, imagine where you'll be in 5 years. If you commit to managing your finances slightly better each month, imagine the stability you'll build over a decade. If you commit to personal growth consistently, imagine the wisdom you'll accumulate over time. The results may not show tomorrow, but they will show, and when they do, people will call it success, they will call it talent, they will call it luck. But you will know the truth. It was daily progress. Never underestimate the power of small improvements repeated with patience and faith. Because what you do today, even in the smallest measure, is quietly building who you will become tomorrow. And tomorrow, built daily, becomes extraordinary. Let me leave you with something that may simplify your entire approach to success. Done consistently beats perfect occasionally. We live in a world that admires brilliance. We admire the flawless performance, the extraordinary breakthrough, the dramatic leap. But what truly builds a remarkable life is far less dramatic. It is steady, it is disciplined, it is repeated. A perfect effort once in a while will not change your life. A good effort repeated daily will. Perfection is intense, but it is often short-lived. Consistency is less exciting, but it is powerful beyond measure. Think about it this way. If someone exercises intensely for 3 days and then quits for a month, they may feel proud for a moment, but their body will not transform. Another person who exercises moderately 3 or 4 times a week every week may not look impressive in a single session. But give them a year and the difference will be undeniable. Consistency compounds, perfection burns out. Perfection is emotional. It depends on feeling inspired. It depends on circumstances being just right. It depends on having enough time, enough energy, enough certainty. And when those conditions aren't perfect, the action doesn't happen. Consistency, on the other hand, is principle-driven. It says, this is what I do, and not when I feel like it. Not when everything aligns, but because it is part of who I am becoming. The world does not reward occasional excellence as much as it rewards reliable contribution. If you are building a business, your customers do not need you to be extraordinary once. They need you to be dependable repeatedly. If you are building a career, your employer does not require one perfect day. They value steady performance. If you are building character, it is not one heroic decision that defines you. It is the daily choices no one sees. Consistency builds reputation, and reputation builds opportunity. Here is something else to consider. When you aim for perfection, you raise the emotional stakes so high that starting becomes difficult. You feel pressure, you feel tension, you fear mistakes, but when you aim for consistency, the pressure lowers. You give yourself permission to be human yet committed. A simple plan executed daily will outperform a brilliant plan executed occasionally. You don't need the perfect morning routine. You need a routine you will follow. You don't need the perfect strategy. You need a strategy you will apply. You don't need flawless discipline. You need faithful discipline. Faithful over flawless. The person who writes 1 page a day will eventually have a book. The person who waits for the perfect burst of inspiration may have endless ideas, but no manuscript. The person who saves a modest amount each month will build wealth. The person who waits for the perfect financial moment may remain stuck in intention. What makes consistency so powerful is that it removes negotiation. When something becomes a standard rather than a choice, your progress accelerates. Standards create structure. Structure creates freedom. When you decide, this is what I do each day to move forward, you eliminate the daily debate. You conserve mental energy. You focus on execution instead of emotion. And here's the remarkable part. Consistency builds identity. When you show up repeatedly, you begin to see yourself differently. You're no longer someone who tries. You're someone who does. That identity shift changes everything, because once you believe you are consistent, you act in alignment with that belief. Perfection focuses on outcome, consistency focuses on process, and the process, faithfully followed, produces the outcome. There will be days when you don't feel strong, days when motivation is low, days when results seem slow. Those are the days consistency matters most, because on those days you prove to yourself that your commitment is deeper than your mood. Anyone can act when inspired. Champions act when committed. The great advantage of consistency is that it builds resilience. When you show up again and again, even imperfectly, you learn to endure, you learn to adapt, you learn to finish what you start. And over time, those steady efforts create something extraordinary, not because they were dramatic, but because they were dependable. You don't need to be spectacular every day, you need to be steady. In the end, success is less about intensity and more about integrity, doing what you said you would do, long after the excitement fades. So let others chase perfect moments. You commit to daily movement, because done consistently will always outperform perfect occasionally. And consistency, practiced long enough, becomes unstoppable.